Summer is here, y'all. And nothing is going to stop us from giving our kids those incredible summer experiences they will carry with them forever. So the T.D. Jakes Foundation and our amazing partners are bringing the fun to you this summer with STEAM Academy 2020. It is a brand new online STEAM exploration experience that will captivate your kids and unleash their imagination, all while giving them a leg up and a bright future. And it's totally free. Sign them up today and make this summer an adventure they'll never forget. So many people look to you. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Clinton. You know, most of the time you hear everybody talking about how to be successful, but you started your story talking about how can I serve? And that's what made you successful.
You have to draw a line in the sand that says, I am going to find the way to serve. If you're trying to figure to survive, and I understand you got to survive, but you'll never survive by focusing on survival. You only survive by focusing on serving.
We have to respect each other to bring a chair to the table that's for somebody other than your comrade and the people that you're comfortable with.
There's something inside you that is uniquely created by God that is superior. You may not have found it yet, but it's there. But not to make yourself feel superior, because that's fake and that's phony and that'll separate you.
Where we have common interests like clean water, clean air,
education,
those kinds of things we need to collaborate on as a team, and everybody needs a seat at the table. Brothers and sisters, I am thrilled to have a very, very, very special guest that really doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to give him one nonetheless. It's hard to describe. He's done just about some of everything imaginary. He's an icon in the literary world, highly respected in the business world, renowned as a motivational speaker, and I'm blessed to have him here with me today. Would you welcome Tony Robbins? Thank you for being here.
Bishop, it's so great to be back with you, brother. You're just an amazing soul. We're talking off camera. I have so much respect for you and the impact you have on people around the world. I feel like we're brothers from a different mother, so it's a privilege to be back with you.
I'm excited about it. I'm going to jump right in and try to drain every little bit of juice out of you I can get. I'm so excited. You know, the very first time I saw you, okay, I woke up in the middle of the night and the TV was going and you were on and you were sitting on a big old yacht, you know, that they christened with a bottle of champagne, and you were laid back living the easy life. And I made the mistake of thinking that you were one of those guys born with a silver spoon in his mouth. That's not really the truth. You came up through the trenches. Reading your books and researching your life, I found out that we have similar backgrounds. You left home at an early age from a tempestuous home and went out on your own and started as a janitor. My father owned the janitorial service, and
wow.
I could swing a mop before I could swing a pen.
Me too. I didn't know that.
We could trade buffing secrets, you know. Would you have ever, if somebody would have told that 17, 18-year-old boy who was swinging mops and cleaning offices that one day he would be who you are, would he have believed it?
Well, I think grace, first of all, the grace goes to God. You know that as well as I do. I'm a very fortunate soul, and I've done my part. You know, faith without works is dead, as we all know. So I had these visions, and I think they were given to me by God when I was a very young boy. I saw myself helping these mass numbers of people, and I didn't know of anything like a seminar. I thought either I'd be a minister or I'd be a politician or I'd be a general. I didn't know what it looked like, but I just knew I wanted to serve people and would help them get through difficult times. And so by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I had kind of laid out a plan that in my 20s, I was going to figure out how to help any individual that really wants to help, that if I was committed and they were committed, we could change and get the change to happen. And in my 30s, I said, I'll be able to do that with small groups of people simultaneously. In my 40s, big groups. In my 50s, institutions. And in my 60s, you know, it would be a global impact, or I might do something in the political area. Or I might start a church. I thought of all the above, quite frankly.
Don't take my job. Come on, leave me something.
I just turned 60, and I don't think anyone's going to ever take your job, Bishop.
I'm terrible on jet skis and stuff, so let me preach, you know.
But I've always had that. I've always had that vision to serve, and you know, I'm the kind of guy that, you know, I watch a movie and somebody makes the hard choice, somebody sacrifices for somebody else. I'm in tears. It's inexplicable. I have a level of empathy and emotion that I can't claim credit for. I think I was born with it, but I'm grateful for it because it's kept me hungry to serve. You know, like people say, you've been doing this for this is my 43rd year. And, you know, I've been doing it since I was 17. And it's like, you know, don't you get tired of it? And it's like you, Bishop. I know you can't get tired when you're doing what you're made for. So I'm just grateful to God that I'm able to help a few people around the world, and that I keep hungry learning and being able to solve problems. And as I solve them, I figure out my own problems or anybody else. Once I figure them out, then I can help millions of people with it. And we live in such an amazing time, Bishop, where your message is not limited to the great state of Texas. I mean, it's all over the world. And so we both have that privilege because of the times that we live in. And it's our responsibility to use it in a way, hopefully, that really makes a difference.
One of the things that really inspired me, you know, most of the time you hear everybody talking about how to be successful, but you started your story talking about how can I serve? And that's what made you successful. And I think motivation is everything.
Yeah, I think when I don't like the word motivation sometimes because some people use it like a warm bath, you know, and I you know, you should take a bath regularly, but you also need strategy. And what I love about you is you both inspire and you provide steps and strategies and tools. I think people need both. But I do think motive does matter. That if your motive is just to get something for yourself, you're going to get a certain level of insight. You're trying to support your family. Right. You get a different level of insight because it's serving more of life. If you're trying to serve your community, you get different insights. If you're trying to serve humanity, I don't mean what you tell people. I mean what the soul knows. There are insights I know you've had, my brother, and I've had at times, you know, when people are in front of me, there's no way I should be able to know these things about them. And they're there, and I know what to do, and that's God.
You know, that's what's fabulous. So many people look to you. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bill Clinton, you have been a force and a resource for some of the top CEOs around the world, steered them through tough places, mergers, takeovers, volatile takeovers, giving them guidance and that sort of thing. What kind of information would you give to a small business owner, especially in the turbulence that we're having right now? This is bad news for a lot of Americans for a lot of different reasons, not only economically, but of course the pandemic has wreaked havoc. We have a physiological pandemic and we have an economic pandemic happening simultaneously. If ever was a chance we needed the advice of Tony Robbins, and most of us couldn't afford it. So this is our chance to kind of freeload.
You can always afford it. That's why I did books and there's YouTubes, and you know, you don't have to spend a dime to get my information. But first of all, half the people you talk about are your fans too. I know Oprah is one of your biggest fans. So, but you know, I think the biggest pandemic we're dealing right now is fear. It's more than the physical. Because, you know, we made all these decisions to shut down the world economy. And if you and I had said 3 months ago, hey, the 2/3 of the world's going to be shut in and forced into their own homes, not be able to go outside or go to the beach or do anything, you would have laughed. You said no one would agree to that. But it was because of fear. So we can't change that. So here's how I look at things. A business person or a person that's going through hell right now, I don't know anybody who isn't going through hell right now. I have 54 companies myself. I'm not bragging. It's not fun right now, to say the least, because I got 2,200 employees. I got sports teams that I own, and our soccer, you know, LAFC soccer team, we just built the stadium, 2 years, crushing it, 22,000 people a night. Done. No season, no television revenues, no business, no ticket sales, no sponsors, and giant overhead. I got a resort in Fiji that, you know, there's no COVID there, but the flights aren't going there at all, right? I've got my event business where they just shut down 9 countries where I'm going to want to help people. And so, in all those things, what do? I think you look at it 2 ways. Number one, you got to start at a global level that says, as a human being, I got to lead, not follow. I got to educate myself, because fear, a decision made from fear, is almost always the wrong decision. So where does that start? It starts by seeing it as it is, not taking it casual, but also not seeing it worse than it is. Step 2, see it better than it is. Without a vision, people perish. If you don't create a compelling future, even though it's difficult now, you got to remember this is the season. Winter comes and winter goes. Some winters are hard, some are soft, some are long, some are short. But what always follows winter, thank God, is the springtime. What always follows the night is the day. You just got to work on yourself. I mean, for things right now, it's like we got to do our part. For things to change, my original teacher was a guy named Jim Rohn. He used to say to me, for things to change, you got to change. For things to get better, you got to get better. And I think if we can not just get out of the fear a little bit, that doesn't mean don't do what the government tells you. I don't want to be misinterpreting me. They're telling you to social distance. Whatever they tell you to do it. Comply. But don't let fear control you. That's my message. And start to create a vision for where you want to go. And then the third step is make it the way you want to see it. And in order to do that, you've got to put yourself in a place where you're doing something to build up inside. So as a business owner, specifically,
all right,
every business owner always should be working on two businesses. Mm-hmm. The business they're in and the business they're going to become. Because if you think of it this way, if you just work on the business you want to become, then you have no cash flow and you got some problems. If you just work on the business you're in, then your IBM and Microsoft takes you, or then your Barnes and Noble and Amazon takes you, right? I mean, that's the nature. So right now you have a little bit of time to start to design what you might want to do. So you want to be able to innovate. And the way I do this in every business I've owned, I got 54 companies. We do over $6 billion in business. I don't know what it'll be by the end of this, quite honestly, but that's what it was as of a couple months ago, right? Okay. So I've got 2,500 plus employees on 4 different continents, in everything from AI businesses to, sports teams, to resorts, to, stem cell companies. It's a mass variety. In all of those companies, what I do with them, whether I started them or whether I come in and become an early investor and help it to grow, is I look to answer 2 questions to grow any business. One, who is your ideal customer? Right now, not who has been your customer. Who's your ideal customer? Who's someone who will love your product and service, and even in the middle of COVID-19 will use it, buy it, tell other people, give referrals to it? And then the second question is, what's an irresistible offer? Because you're going to need that to get them off where they've been conditioned to do nothing for a while at home. Let me give you an example. There's a company called Zappos that many of your viewers and listeners probably are familiar with, the online company that sells shoes. Mm-hmm. And they started back in 2000. If I came to you in 2000, and if your viewership and listenership were to think for a moment, where were you? Like, remember when they're talking about, the whole world's going to end because Y2K?
I remember.
Right? So remember where you were. That's 2000. If I said to you in the year 2000, I got this great idea. We're going to start a company to sell shoes to women online. Let's invest. Most people look at you like you're crazy. Why? Because they're going to go, they got to try the shoes on. No one's going to want to buy the shoes, pay for shipping, put them on, try them on. If they don't fit, ship them back. They're not going to do it. And they weren't. So a friend of mine named Tony Hsieh, who's now the CEO of the company, joined this company when it was just a few guys in San Francisco in this little apartment, and they had burned through all their money and nothing was working. And he said to them, you got to do 2 things. You got to know who's your ideal customer, not who you used to serve. Who's going to love you, work with you, be with you. He said, here's the good news for you. You already have them. Women are your ideal customer. Men are not. Some men are, but most women are not. You, Bishop, would probably be a great one for shoes. That's my guess. So everything about you is perfect in the way you dress. But most women, they put on one shoe, they're one woman. They're another shoe, they're another woman. It changes their state. For women, shoes can equal happiness. And he said, so you got the right customer, but you don't have an irresistible offer. And that's what I'd have people do at home right now, is to start brainstorming. What do I mean by that? He said, well, what's getting in the way? What if we said to them, buy as many shoes as you want, we'll ship as many as you want to, and we'll pay the shipping, you try them on, and if none of them work, or all of them, anyone, you want to send them all back, and we'll pay the shipping back. Now, if you're an investor, and someone says, we're going to make a new offer, well, let them buy as many shoes they want, try them all, and send them all back, and we'll pay shipping both ways. You go, are you crazy? We're going bankrupt. And that's what they said. And he goes, you're already going bankrupt. You need an irresistible offer. Let's give it a try. That distinction, and I've done this over and over with companies I took from $20 million to $800 million. I mean, those kinds of growth, by just figuring out who really wants this, will enjoy this, and then figure out what they need, what do they want, what's missing from their life. How do I fall in love with a customer, not my product or service? Because the product and services has to change. And then how do I come up with an irresistible offer and then over-deliver, do more for them than anybody else is doing? And now you have a client. You got to know who your customer is, but most importantly, you got to have an irresistible offer. And before that, you got to work on your own psychology, because 80% of success in anything is psychology and mindset. 20% is the mechanics.
Don't you think that a part of it, dismissing the fear, means that you need to have a good solid fact? You have to know what the rules are. You have to know what the facts are. We're in a time right now that the facts have vacillated every day. One day, this is going to be over in a few days. The next day, you don't need to wear a mask. The next day, you do need to wear a mask. One day, you can clean it all up with Lysol. The next day, we don't have a cure for it at all. I think the uncertainty is at the root of the fear, not to mention the fact that we do have a polarized media system that's pumping our heads with what we want to hear to drive up ratings for profit margins. But at the end of the day, a small business, an average small business in the U.S. only has 6 weeks of expendable income before they're underwater. We've spent those 6 weeks locked in the house. So a lot of small businesses are in trouble right now. They may have innovative ideas. If they listen to what you said, they may have creativity. They may have the liquidity of thought, the nimbleness of mind to be able to invigorate themselves beyond this breach and imagine themselves in the world of the future. But capitalizing that vision becomes a real struggle. What do you say to people who are trying to capitalize a vision when they're underwater? They've spent through the 6 weeks of money. They filed for the PPP. They didn't get it. All the big boys ate up most of the PPP. And the CARES Act, which was a wonderful thing, didn't really reach the people that it was intended to the degree that it needed to reach them. How do they begin to get back up on their feet again?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything you just said. And I think the media is not trying to take advantage in any way. I just think the media is no longer designed to educate us or inform us. It's designed to startle you because we're not in an information society anymore, right? We're drowning in information. We're starving for wisdom. And so they know if they startle you, if they upset you, if they excite you, you're going to click on the button, you're going to go there, and that's how they get paid. So it's not them, but we have to make our own decision. But the larger question is, you got to look and see examples, because what happens in our brain is when we're fearful, there's no way. And the answer is, you and I both started with nothing. We started with our ability to understand that we are not just the manager of our circumstances, that with God's power and help, we're the creator of our lives, right? We know how to create again. And you have to stop thinking about putting Humpty Dumpty back together again the same way, because it's not going to happen. What you got to say is, okay, what is the need right now, and how can I adapt and serve? That's why I always say in business, the worst mistake businesses make is they fall in love with their product or service. We all do that. But you got to fall in love with your client and see what they need. And so, in Texas, I saw a couple of simple examples. I saw a guy that was, a butcher, and, nobody could come in. So what did he do? He adapted. He not only made it so there was a pickup outside, but he hired a chef, something he never would have done, had made side foods, and then cooked some of the beef. So you could either have everything pre-cooked or done and delivered. His business is up over 1,000%. He's actually renting next door instead of going bankrupt. So I could give you a dozen examples. People at this stage, you have to draw a line in the sand that says, I want to find the way to serve. If you're trying to figure to survive, and I understand you got to survive, but you'll never survive by focusing on survival. You only survive by focusing on serving and figuring out more about what does your client or ideal customer need, want, desire, fear. What need can I meet that can be irresistible and necessity right now? And then how can I make that offer so irresistible and so over-deliver that I spring my business up?
I think you're dead on target when you're talking about adaptability quotient, the ability to be able to reimagine your business and not to get stuck into a mode of operating. I think this is a huge paradigm shift. I don't think we're going back to business as normal. I think it's going to be an evolution into a new way of doing business. Yes. Those that survive and are adaptable and can reimagine themselves have the best chances of being able to do it. When you look at the stock market and you look at the volatility of the stock market, do you think that the stock market is more volatile because of the virus, or because of the fear, or because of what's going on in China, or maybe it's all three?
All three play a role, as you know, and fortunately, easy for me and you. I've done well in both those areas, but I've been training people for years to be prepared for winter because we had the longest bull market in history. So I wrote a book called Unshakable, and I interviewed 50 of the smartest financial minds in the world, from Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, all the way through. I did Money Master the Game, then I wrote a shorter one just specifically on this subject of what should you do in this environment? How do you adapt? What do you make happen? But I think, the market was ready for a jolt anyway. It was just a matter of when. And so I think that this jolt is one greater than I anticipated. I'm sure most any human anticipated, because no one would think that people would comply with shutting down 2/3 of the planet's economy at one time. So now we're going to have to deal with that. And we're going to also have to deal with what that does with the printing of all this money. Because, right now there's going to be a a situation where the economy is in such shock. I mean, when you lose 30 million jobs in what, 6 weeks, 5 weeks?
Right.
I mean, it's huge. So, you know, where I'm looking to try to help is I've shown people what to do to prepare for winter, how to take advantage of winter. Now I'm helping small businesses do it. And the other thing I'm doing, quite frankly, is just feeding people. I've been doing it my whole life, not because I'm a good person, Bishop, but just because when I was a kid, I was 11 years old, we had no money and no food on Thanksgiving, which made it worse because, you know, everybody else is celebrating. And my parents were fighting like crazy. I'll never forget that. It shaped my entire life, screaming things and saying things you can never take back. And there's a knock at the door. And long story short, there's a tall guy standing there with his 2 bags of food and an uncooked turkey in a pot on the ground. He'd set beside it and said, "Is your father here?" And I went to go grab my dad, man, and show him. I couldn't wait to see how excited he was. And he got angry. And he's like, "We don't take, you know, charity." And he went to slam the door. And the guy was a big guy and his foot was right by it. So it bounced off his foot. Mm-hmm. He said, "Sir, I'm just the delivery guy. You know, someone knows you're having a tough time. You know, everyone has a tough time. This is just so you can have a great Thanksgiving." My dad got more aggressive and started to push the door harder, and he put his shoulder against it. And then there was this tough moment. My dad was a big guy, and I'll never forget. This guy saw me behind my dad standing there, and I must have seen the shock on my face. And he said, "Sir, I know you're a good man." He said, "Don't let your family suffer because of your ego." Mm-hmm. I thought my father was going to bust his face. And my father froze, stared at him, took the food, slammed the door, was out saying, "Thank you." But the reason I tell you the story is, you know, I started feeding 2 families as a result of that when I was 17. I wanted to give back, and then 4, and then 8, and then 1 million people a year, and then 2 million. And then I was writing these financial books back, you know, starting back in 2010. And I was looking around interviewing these multi-billionaires and then seeing they cut, you know, the support for families that desperately need it. You know, and I couldn't believe it. They cut it by $6 billion a year in Congress, and no one said a word about it. So if you and I and people like us don't step up in the private sector and help out, every family that legitimately needs food would have to give up 1 week worth of food every month for 12 months based on how much they've cut. What used to be called food stamps when I was growing up.
Right.
So, you know, it's not that anymore, as you know. So the bottom line is I decided, you know what? What if I fed 42 million people in my life up until that point? That was 5 years ago. I said, what if I fed 50 million people in a year? What if I fed 1 billion people? So I called Feeding America, made a partnership, and we fed 500 million meals in the last 5 years. I've committed to 1 billion meals. I'm going to do that. And it's excited me. I've been more excited about that. But right now, I'm upping it this year even more. And anyone who's watching, if they go to Feeding America / you know, Tony Robbins or Billion Meals Challenge, I will double anything that they give, any amount, up to $5 million. And so I want to make sure we make a difference for those people that have no other answer. But the answer about the stock market is was going to make adjustments anyway. It's huge, and it's fear. But what creates the fear? China creates the fear. The virus creates the fear. But I think, you know, the stock market has responded a bit. It's going to have a lot more volatility before we're done, a lot more to deal with. I think you want to study that aspect. And listen, you can go to the library and get my book, or you can go online. If you go to my company, we'll send the book to you for shipping and handling, or you can buy it for $20 at Amazon. But I don't care if you have the money or not. I just want you to know what to do to protect your family.
One of the things you started talking about feeding people, that's literally what I just got through doing. We fed about 30,000 people in all, 5,000 meals to first responders just in the last few weeks.
Wow.
And we're giving out 25,000 boxes of food to people who are unemployed because if you saw the lines in Florida.
No, I know.
The lines are backed up like something that reminds you of the Great Depression.
That's why I brought it up.
When you look at the African-American community and you're talking about fear, you're talking about people that have already been marginalized, and then you're talking about a disproportionate amount of deaths that exist that are being reported in various—
Disproportionate, yeah.
Yeah, it's very disproportionate, and there's some reason for some anxiety. It's a higher hill to climb than it was before all of this happened. So this kind of information is vitally important. Rethinking ourselves. African-American women are going into business more readily than any other people group, but they're not staying in the business because we don't have equal access to capital and credit. Bootstrap people like yourself who pull themselves up from absolutely nothing can speak both languages. You can talk to Warren Buffett on one hand, but on the other hand, you can talk to the barbershop owner who's really making it from haircut to haircut, trying to get up on his feet. You're saying that regardless to the zeros behind the check, it's the principles and the mentality that makes the difference. And it is, in fact, finding a problem and fixing that problem is the greatest marketing tool available in the world. Is that right?
I couldn't say it better myself, brother. That's exactly what it is. But I also think it's the way out of your fear is to serve somebody else who's got it worse off. Because, like, what's the problem? You know, you're driving home before COVID-19 and you're bumper traffic. You think it's a big problem because you're late. But then your car overheats, and now you got to try and figure out how to push your car 4 lanes over and people honking and screaming at you. Now it's not a traffic problem, it's a car problem, right? Now you go to your cell phone to call for some help and there's no coverage, and so you walk a mile and you go down the off-ramp and you trip and break your ankle. Now is the traffic a problem, right? Is your car a problem?
No.
Now you go to the hospital to get your ankle set, and while you're there, you get a phone call and it's a text and it says, "I'm leaving you," the one you used to love. Yeah. Now your ankle's not the problem, the traffic's not the problem, your car's not the problem. Then you get home and get a phone call from the doctor, did your blood work, and he says you have a tumor. Like, what's a problem? Mm-hmm. It's, all relative, my dear friends. And our goal as humans, what makes us humane, what makes us the spiritual side of humanity, what makes us, I think, what we are, is our willingness and our desire to serve. We'll do more for others we love than we'll even do for ourselves. And the research now shows that if you will give, even to strangers that you don't know and never see again, the simple act of giving, because they can see by your saliva, they can check what hormones are stimulated in you. You can sit there and buy 10 people a cup of coffee or 5 people a cup of coffee you don't even know while you're standing in line. And the response and the biochemical uplift from that is stronger than if you would have gone and spent thousands of dollars, right, where you're doing it on yourself to get something. So I'm not saying people shouldn't have things for themselves. Obviously, you and I have done well in those areas too, but it's never been our gig. It's never been your gig. It's never been mine. We just knew we could be prosperous if we helped enough people. And so we're examples of those pieces. But listen, I mean, the amounts that I'm able to do now, like we provide. I was in India and I saw these children dying from waterborne diseases so easy to solve. So now we provide 250,000 people a year, my wife and I, 250,000 people a day rather, with fresh water. Our goal is to get to 1 million. Now you go, oh, easy for you. But this is the mistake people make. I did this when I had nothing. That's why I'm here. Same as you, I know, my brother. Like, I can remember, if you won't give a dime out of $1, I can promise you're not going to give 10 million out of 100 million or 100 million out of $1 billion or any other ratio like that. I can remember one of the worst days of my life. I was working my tail off. I was studying personal development. I was working with this guy, Jim Rohn, sleeping in my car, trying to figure out how to help people. But I was so frustrated. I'm studying all this. I'm working so hard. I got my little business here. Why is it not growing? Why is it not going? And I was feeling so sorry for myself. And I was driving back from Orange County, California on the 57 freeway. We live in this place called Pomona, California. And late at night, nobody on the freeway. And angry, frustrated. God, tell me why. And then I'll never forget the moment. I still have the journal. I pulled over on the side of the road and I wrote on one page, "The secret to living is giving." I just started crying because I realized when I started, it was all about my giving, but then I got into success or failure and trying to pay my bills and all that stuff. And I forgot my real purpose. And I recommitted, things got better. And then I ran through another, when you're in business and you're learning. And so I had some learnings and they were painful learnings. All of a sudden I was broke again. And I remember I was in this little apartment in Venice, California, before Venice was a decent place, and a real rough spot, 400 square foot bachelor apartment, washing my dishes on these hot plates on the trash can and, washing the dishes in the bathtub and cooking on the little plate, feeling sorry for myself, watching Luke and Laura on a program called General Hospital in those days, feeling sorry for myself. I was really in this incredible pity pot. And I had, $22, $23, $24 and some change to my name and not paid my bills. I didn't know how I was going to eat. So I thought, I'm going to go to one of those all-you-can-eat salad bars and load up for the winter. And I lived in Venice, so Marina del Rey was only like 3 miles away and have these boats on the water. I thought, I got to change my consciousness. I'll find a place there. There's a place called El Chorrito. It's a little Mexican-filled place with a salad bar and burritos and stuff right on the water. So I didn't drive my car because I couldn't afford the parking and didn't want to spend the gas money. So I walked. And I got there, life-changing experience. I'm sitting there, I'm feeding my face, focusing on my own survival, and then looking out the window and seeing these giant people with their giant yachts and have this great lifestyle. And it's like, I knew I'd learned that the quality of your life is the quality of your service. I mean, I knew that the more value you add to other human beings, the better you can do. These people aren't just lucky. I could just blame them, or I could go, what are they doing that's adding value to other people more than anyone else? And so I was thinking about those things and trying to get out of my pity pot and starting to get a little bit more intelligent. And then this beautiful woman walks in the front door, and I was a very young man, so I couldn't help but look. And I waited to see if there was a man with her. Of course there was, and he was about, 3.5 feet tall, wearing a suit and a tie, and he looked like you, Bishop. He's like just dressed to the nines, baby. It was like, he was gorgeous. But what struck me was how he held the door for his mom, how he pulled out the chair for her, the way he looked intently into her eyes. I mean, I literally was emotionally moved. I was teary-eyed. I don't know what it was. My own thing of my own mother. I don't know what it was, but it would move me. And so I got up, paid the bill, $4.95, whatever it was. And I got whatever I got, 16, 17, 18, 19 bucks, whatever's left in my pocket. I had no plan. I just walked up to this little boy because I was so moved by him. I didn't look at the woman. I shook his hand, introduced myself. And I said, listen, I just wanted to acknowledge what a gentleman you are. I said, you're a class act. I saw you held the door for your lady, how you pulled out the chair, you're paying attention, you're taking her to lunch. And he goes, well, she's my mom. I said, well, even better. He goes, well, I'm not taking her lunch because, I'm only 8. I said, yes, you are. And I reached in my pocket. I had no plan, I swear. And I just slammed all the money I had on earth, including the change on the table right there in front of him. And his eyes got big as garbage can covers. And he goes, I can't take that. And I said, of course you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are. And then I just smiled. I didn't say another word. And I stormed out of that place. And then I got out. There was no car. Bishop, it was grace. Because I didn't do it for stars in my chart. I didn't do it to look good. I did it because it was right. And I got home and I had no fear. And I woke up the next morning. This was prior to the internet, so you still had your snail mail. And mine was all bills. And I thought, wow, I don't have any food and I don't have any money. But I didn't have any fear. And then I'm going through the bills, and there's a handwritten note, true story. I open it up, and it's from this guy that I loaned $1,200 to like 2 years before, when that was a lot of money for me. And I had chased him for months trying to get that money because I needed to survive, and he wouldn't even return my calls. Apology letter, here's your money, and a little interest. In those days, that would have fed me for a month. But the beauty was I just started to cry. But it was grace tears,
Yes.
And I just like, it's like, well, why did this happen, And I don't know what's true, but the meaning that my brain and God gave me at that time was, you did what was right, and so you're rewarded. You didn't do it because others thought so. I can tell you honestly, Bishop, I've been through, 54 companies. I've been through the ups and downs. In the early days, some of those companies look like go bankrupt, changes in the economy, things like what we've done right now. I've never gone back to that place. And so I tell the story because I want your listeners that are in a tough place to realize, like, when all you got is seed corn, you got to plant it, brothers and sisters. You got to give something. If you do that, it will change your psychology. It'll teach your brain true faith. It'll teach your brain there's more than enough. And it'll make you into a giver instead of one that needs. I used to go to Houston. There was a school there in Houston years ago, and they brought me in because they were doing my material at every grade level. It was a grade school. And they did this assembly to honor me. And I got up and I was like, I can't motivate you guys. You guys are beyond motivation. You motivated me. And so on the spot, I remember I had seen a guy who had sponsored kids at Harlem's college educations. And in that moment, I just said, all of you here in the 6th grade, you only got 1 year of this. I'm going to pay for your entire 4-year college education. And I said, I'm going to sign a contract in advance. I didn't really have all the money for it then. And I said, but here's what I want from you, though. I want you to keep a B average. And I said, I'll provide mentors for you. And I want you to give me 25 hours of community service every single year. And, they didn't even know what it meant at that point. And some of their parents were really suspicious. And, I'm a tall white guy that seems wealthy coming into this community that's obviously more minority driven, and a lot of single moms and so forth. And so I spent time till they got to see it. I signed contracts. I did it all. And the reason I did it is I didn't have a college education. I still don't. I'm self-educated. But I knew the value of someone becoming a giver, that if they could spend time, because some of them, the parents are upset with me. My child needs to be taken care of. They don't need to give to someone else. Someone needs to give to them. And I said, listen, you're right, but it's not happening. So why don't we get them to give to someone else and learn that they're more than all they've been conditioned to believe by society or by the world or by challenges or by real problems. And I got to tell you, I call them my champions of excellence. And that was, almost 20 years ago. They've gone on to become doctors and lawyers and nurses and accountants and have their babies. And I stayed with them all through, coached them all the way through. It was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. So I just want people to know, and I have the money to do it. I committed. If you can serve more of life, you're more valuable. If you're more valuable, you will find a way to prosper because you're not looking to prosper, you're looking to give.
Let me jump in here for a minute. There's something that you said that I think is very important. I live in both realities. I have friends that are CEOs that are doing very, very well, and I have friends that are barely making it from day to day.
Yeah, me too.
I started a T.D. Jakes Foundation because I wanted to be able to be a bridge between these two worlds. I think that there are CEOs and companies and for-profit entities that really want to make a difference in underserved communities, but they don't do like you do and go into those communities. Maybe they don't have time to go into those communities and take on those cases one at a time. With 30 million people on our social media database, I thought I have a responsibility to be a connector between these two worlds and to bring them together. So they're afraid of church, so I couldn't do it that way. I started the foundation so that we'd have an opportunity to solve some of America's darkest problems, some of them hundreds of years old that we have not resolved yet because we cannot get supply connected to demand.
Yes.
So the TDJ Foundation, we got STEM programs. We're doing reentry programs. Yeah, we're doing reentry programs for people who were formerly incarcerated. We're doing job fairs for companies who want inclusion and say that they can't find upper level qualified people into positions that look like me when they do exist. They're all over the place.
Of course they do.
There's a connection that needs to be made between the two. And TDJ Foundation can help to expedite that. America needs to fix its old problems so that we can move forward to the challenges in front of us. But we can't get to the challenges in front of us when we haven't cleaned up the leftover debris from Jim Crow and from slavery and from history. We have to resolve those issues. And the onus is upon people like us, our generation, who have lived long enough, wise enough to be able to understand something beyond yourself, and you want to leave this world better than you found it for your children and your grandchildren. That means equity for everybody. That's right. And it's also a global problem. So we have, out of the 30 million people that we have, our biggest city is in Lagos, Nigeria, then Dallas, Texas, then Nairobi, Kenya, then Atlanta, Georgia, all the way down to Melbourne, Australia. Our base is quite large. I thought, I can't just sit on this base and just preach. I want to start this foundation so that there are some metrics and some quantifiable results in education, in STEM programs, in jobs, in reentry programs. You have to know people to help people. You took the time to know that family.
Well, first of all, congratulations that you're doing that. I'm going to make a $100,000 donation to your foundation for the STEM component for you. I know you put it to good work. So afterwards, you just send me the info and we'll make that happen. But I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to give you $100,000 anyway. I've already said it, but I'll do it. But I'd like to use it if you can in your church as matching funds. Because whatever I do, I try to get it matched. So I'll put $100,000 in matching funds. If you don't raise the $100,000, you still get the $100,000 from me. I'm not making conditional, but utilize that and see if we can't double the impact so we can get more students, understanding there is no color barrier from the standpoint of the mind. I'm sure society may create one, but I'm not talking about the spirit or the soul.
Right.
Our mind. And anyone, I don't care who you are, is dedicated and devoted, can master anything. But oftentimes the conditioning that society has created, people have created, we're all responsible. I feel I'm responsible, and I know you coming from your community does, but I don't separate communities. My community is brothers and sisters of God, and humanity is my community. But when any part of that community is hurting, we all got to be hurting, and we all have a responsibility to try to help our brother and sister to have a leg up.
Once we get that leg up, we won't talk about color at all. The reality is I grew up in West Virginia and there were poor white folks. There are poor people of every color, but disproportionately, we're seeing a poverty in Black and brown people in a way that we cannot go colorblind to the reality.
I agree.
Green
100%.
Back up on their feet. So those are things that we have to deal with. Thank you, first of all, for the donation. I didn't do this for that. I wasn't expecting.
Oh, I know you didn't do it for that. You didn't ask me. I want to do it for you just because I think this is one of the most important solutions is getting more leaders in. I mean, one of the biggest problems we're facing, Bishop, I know you know, is what's happening with automation, what's happening with robots, what's happening with, we're living in a world where pretty soon about 45% of the jobs, if you breathe most of the studies that we have today, are going to be gone because they're going to be replaced. And they're not just blue collar jobs or machine jobs, they're now white collar jobs too. So this makes it where knowledge skills, right? Your capacity to understand science and technology, all of this engineering becomes so much more valuable and important than any other time. And I think, we went from being, 85% farmers in this culture of ours, the United States of America, 150 years ago, to now it's less than 3%, and we serve the whole world food. Right. And the reality is a lot of jobs change, but that was a long time to change. I mean, you and I both know that it's not going to be many more years before who's going to hire a trucker? There's, between Uber drivers and truck drivers, you got 5 million people in this country. They disappear from the workforce, and they're going to, and no one's preparing them because they're not being prepared for something new. Who's going to hire someone to drive a truck 8 hours a day, pay insurance when they can hire a truck to do it? They get to depreciate it, works 24 hours a day, and it's more effective. That's one type of job alone that's going to disappear, and that's 5 million people. You can look at the farming jobs. There's another 6 million based on technologies coming. 11 million people is what we lost in the beginning of, in 2008 destruction. We got 30 million right now, but hopefully they're not permanent. Many of those hopefully will get back to work soon.
So unemployment rate before COVID-19 was going to go up to 20% for African Americans simply because of STEM programs. Take racism, take preferential treatment, take human biases out of it. Yeah. Just technology alone is going to put us in a position, God only knows what those numbers have gone to because of COVID-19. We have to do something different. One of the things that I think that came out of COVID-19 that I hope America and greater still the world notices, it did not make a distinction between Democrats and Republicans, between blacks and whites, between rich and poor. I don't care how rich you were, you could still get it. I don't care how white you were, you could still get it, black, brown. And sometimes it takes a common enemy to bring about real unity. And I think that we need to understand that if one of us is in trouble, all of us is in trouble, irrespective of what their zip code is. We have to understand that we have to take on this problem and not say that's their problem. This is my problem. This is her problem. No, this is our problem. And we have to have a global understanding of ourselves. You and people like you have traveled around the world, experienced that, embrace a global understanding of the world, whereas most people live in the silos of their own profession and their own circle of friends. How do you break out of your circle to get a more global understanding of the world? Because that helps that philanthropy to reach beyond your zip code and your friends. And the $100,000 you're talking about, the real challenge is not to the poor to match it, but to other CEOs to step up to the plate, other business people to step up to the plate and start sowing right into the areas where people actually know the community you're trying to help, rather than just stats you read about in the Wall Street Journal on your way to work.
I don't know that there's an easy answer. I think my good fortune is, last year, they're going to be different this year, but I went to 108 cities and 18 countries, come to those countries multiple times. So when you do that, you get a broader perspective. I also grew up dirt poor, not knowing where I was going to get my next meal. So when I hear that somebody else is suffering, it's not some number in my head. But I think the only way human beings change is by having new life experiences. And it's hard because the whole world, humanity tends to be tribal. Tribal based on location, on color, on size, on scope, on all kinds of different things, north versus south, east, everything. And so the way to get out of the tribalism is, I think, elevating your consciousness, which, quite frankly, that is what every great religion is really about ultimately, is elevating your consciousness. I'm personally Christian, as I know you are, and it's like, this is what we're made for. We're made to serve. We're made to love our brother and sister as thyself, which precludes that you loved yourself too. But the only way out, I think, is the community. It's getting out of just the community you're in. What I would do, for example, I grew up, my mom was a Christian school teacher for a brief period of time. And I remember I went through a stage where there was so much pain in our life, I questioned there was a God. And then, I wanted to be a great athlete, and I wasn't. I had to take care of my family, so I didn't get to do anything until later. I didn't really develop that way, and I was 5'1", I'm 6'7" now.
But you look like a great athlete.
Well, today I would be a great athlete, I am, but I wasn't back then. Okay. But the bottom line is, so I decided I'd write. And so I started writing articles and interviewing people, and I worked for a daily newspaper at the time I was 14 years old by just hustling. But I tell you that because I got a scholarship to go to the University of California, San Luis Obispo. And one day in the journalism class, it was all adults or, college kids. We all got assigned to go cover a church. And so, at this point, I'd been questioning God at this point and everything else. And I was walking with some friends. We walked by a Mormon church. And I remember they thrashed these people. These Mormons are horrible. I said, nobody can be that horrible. I'm going. And it started me, and I pulled some interesting things from the Mormon church, including keeping a journal, as simplistic as that may sound. But the community. And then the next week I went to another church, and then I went to, and I went to different religions. And I did that from the time I was probably 13, 14, I did it a bit. But when I was 17 on my own, I would go to at least 2 or 3 different churches a month from different religions, different backgrounds, so I could start to see the common elements of God. And so while I'm still personally a Christian, I don't tell people what to believe, but every great religion is calling us. It's calling us to our higher self. And no matter where you move, if you stay in the old consciousness, the old thinking pattern, it won't make a difference. But by going to different places and meeting different people, it's like a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. You can believe you know what China is. We've never been to China, you don't have a clue. Right. You can believe you know what the African-American community is like, but if you've never spent any time there, you don't have a clue. Or the white community, or any community, right?
Right.
So we need to have more experience of each other. My hope is maybe this gets a longer period of time of us really looking out for each other because we have to.
Right. I think alliances like this, conversations between people like me and you, become a model for people to look at, that we lose our fear and our timidity and insecurity about connecting with each other. And it exists on both sides of the track where we can make connections, because a lot of times your help may not come from people who look like you or go to your yacht club or belong to your country club or go to your barber shop or live in your neighborhood. And we all have to get out of our silos, because we have common things like pandemics that come in that force us to the public square. If they find a cure, it'll work for me, it'll work for you. It does not just work for Black or white or brown people, it'll work for everybody. There's more to unite us than there is to divide us. Do you think that, given when we come through the other side of this, and neither one of us have a crystal ball, what changes? After 9/11, a lot of things changed in the world. After the civil rights movement, a lot of things changed in the world. Those dead bodies of those young girls burned up in that church changed the way America saw race and religion. A lot of things change after any type of horrific. Katrina changed things. What do you think COVID-19 is going to do to change the way we interact in the public square, not just in America, but around the world?
I think it's going to determine whether or not we stay in fear. If we stay in fear, we're going to make the wrong decisions. We're going to separate from each other. We're going to disconnect. We're going to tribalize. And I think we've had enough of that. I don't think that's a sustainable solution. If we get to the facts, like we talked about earlier, I think what will happen is it'll make us question more and not let fear dominate it as much, not just take for granted, but be a more critical thinker, question when someone tells us something of that nature. And the way I look at life is I try to explain to people, I think I'm able to work with people from 100 countries, every race, every religion, every background, because I have a true level of love and respect for everybody. I don't go, this person's better or worse, because here's what I believe in my soul. I believe everybody I meet is superior to me in some way, and I don't feel like I have no self-esteem. I'm not talking some fake humility, because everyone has different life experiences. Right. So, Bishop, you've got experiences I'll never have, and you've pushed through and you've made them and served. And so like, I look at all the things about you that make me hold you as a superior human being, but I can do that with, the person I meet at the seminar or the person I meet at the mailbox or anywhere else too. Because even if I don't know them yet, I know there's something they're superior to me in. It might be superior in feeling depressed. I may not want to master that area, but they're superior at something, right? And then at the same time, I know I'm superior to every human being that I meet in some way, not because I'm a better human being, not because I spent 42 years of my life obsessed with finding answers to make the quality of life better, and I'm crazily committed to constantly grow. It's like some people say, I got 10 years of experience of doing something. I go, do you have 10 years of experience or 1 year that you did 9 more times? Did you really grow? And so I own who I am as well, and that allows me to treat everybody as my equal, meaning I know you're superior to me in some ways. I'm not inferior and worried about it. I know there are going to be areas I'm going to know better just because of my life experience is different. So I look at you as my brother who I respect, right? Mm-hmm. Who I have a love for, especially in your case, because I love anybody that's here to serve more than themselves, and you've spent a lifetime doing that, brother. So I just think if people could start looking at it that way, if you're feeling inferior, just remember, man, there's something inside you that is uniquely created by God that is superior. You may not have found it yet, but it's there. But not to make yourself feel superior, because that's fake and that's phony and that'll separate you. No, everybody has something that they're superior to, and you got something that's there. So let's see how we can serve each other as brothers and sisters. And that's when people feel most alive anyway. What you get isn't going to make you happy.
No.
Who you become, that's going to make you really happy or really sad. And so you got to declare how you're going to live. And my hope is that coming out of this COVID, as the facts unweave, we get out of the fear mode. We're still going to have lots to fear, meaning like things that make us uncomfortable, but that won't get you through. It's your faith and your certainty and your action and your ability to innovate that's going to get you through. And so you got to feed your mind. And my original teacher, Jim Rohn, used to say, every day stand guard at the door of your mind. Mm-hmm. He'd say, look, if he said, Tony, what if your worst enemy puts sugar in your coffee? What's going to happen to you? I said, nothing, I got sweet coffee. He goes, what if your family member, your friend, somebody who loves you accidentally drops one drop of strychnine in your coffee? I go, I'd be dead. He goes, that's right. So watch your coffee. He said, because you don't know where it's coming from. Yeah. Every day you got to stand guard at the door of your mind and make sure you're only putting things that defeat it. So that's why I started some simple rituals. Like every single day I start with my prayers, and then I get up and I do my workout, because getting your body going, fear is physical. So is courage. Courage is you're afraid, but you do it anyway. You push those muscles, you run, you jump in freezing water, you swim, you push some weights, you do something where you push yourself, and that strength comes back. And the body strength goes to the mind, the heart, the soul, and the spirit. So just some simple disciplines during this time for your viewers and listeners would be really important. If I was going to give you 5 things that took me when I was sleeping on the street and then sleeping in my old Volkswagen, and how did I move from there? The 5 things I did. Number 1, I was so depressed. I was like, I have to feed my mind because these weeds are automatically growing. The problems are growing automatically. So I remember I went and bought a book called The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. And I read this book, and it talked about conditioning your mind with total certainty and belief. And I did that. But then I also set this goal I'm going to read 30 minutes a day. Jim Rohn taught me 30 minutes a day, miss a meal, don't miss feeding your mind. And so every day you got to do something, feed your mind. You can't let the stuff that comes to your phone do it. That's clickbait. You got to read a book or something with philosophy or strategy. They'll shape you. Second thing, every day you got to feed and strengthen your body, because if the body's not strong, your immunity's not going to be strong. And this disease is an immunity disease. It's nothing more than that. It's pretty obvious at this stage. And so you need to make it strong. So body and mind. Third, you got to really find a great role model. Like I had no money. No one in my family had money. No one ever had any abundance. We couldn't feed ourselves. So it's like, who was like us? And I saw Sir John Templeton, who wasn't a sir at the time. He was a guy that started with nothing. And in 1939, when the stock market crashed and Hitler invaded in Poland, he took all the money out, $10,000, borrowed money and invested in every company, because he knew that when times are good, people want too much for their house, too much for their stock. When it's the worst, it's the gloomiest, that's when people will give you what's valuable for next to nothing. I made him a billionaire, so I studied him. I eventually interviewed him. I became friends with him. In the beginning, it was just studying him. But you got to find role models that make it real. And then fourth, you got to get a plan and take some action. If it doesn't work, keep changing it. And lastly, every day, try to help somebody else who's worse off than you are, and then you'll be out of yourself. You'll be back in that place of spirit and soul, and you'll be a creator instead of a manager of circumstance.
Absolutely amazing. Let me put on my prophetic hat for a minute and tell you what I think.
I'd love to hear.
I think that technology, which was already coming down at us with breakneck speed, is going to take a quantum leap at the end of COVID-19. Because we had to survive through technology, we had to ingest all our information, we had to do all of our meetings through technology, we had to do television through technology. I think it forced us into where we were going anyway. I don't see us totally coming back from that again. I think it gives us safe space and distancing at its best. Love it or hate it, I think technology just leaped up to the forefront even faster and quicker than we anticipated it to be, and I think it's here to stay, which makes STEM programs even more radical, more important, something we've got to do even quicker than I thought we would have to do. You're talking about churches all over America having service online. Yeah. You're talking about restaurants receiving orders online. You're talking about going to the grocery store having groceries delivered online. the way we do things it's forced us to reinvent ourselves already. I don't think we're ever going to fully come back from that. Second thing I think that it's done, it's caused us to have a greater respect for people we normally ignore. Because we had to keep our own kids, we've got a greater respect for teachers than we ever had before. Hopefully
Yes.
they'll come out with better pay, more respect, be considered professionals again. We've got a new respect for nurses. We've got a new respect for people who do caretaking. We've got a new respect for people who work with elderly people in nursing homes. All of that, we've had to recalibrate how we think about those things. I think it's going to cause us to have a different level of respect because we lived together and we died together.
Yeah.
There's something.
I think you're spot on, brother. It's spot on. My only thing I add to that is, and one of my favorite things, by the way, has been watching, like in New York, the parades of people, you know, applauding and celebrating all the first responders that are out there looking out for us. I mean, I think it's incredible. I think the only thing we have to be careful of, and I think that you'll relate to this because of your focus in life, is that technology is multiplying in its power much more rapidly than human psychology. And our spirit is more than our psychology. Our spirit can influence that, but under fear, it tends to get in the way. One of the great gifts of technology is how much more rapidly we can make things happen. We can do it cheaper. I mean, you know, today a person with a phone in Africa can compete with anybody else in the world. They can study at Harvard. You know, they can get maps and know what's going on. They can transfer money, you know, with little amounts of money really fast and things they don't even need a bank anymore. And we have tools today. When I was coaching President Clinton, I remember we were talking and I was like, you know, he was talking about privacy. And I said, why don't we try this new thing? It's called email. There's this company called AOL. And he goes, yeah, I've heard about that. President of the United States didn't have an email account when it was Clinton, right? Now you look at, there's more technology in the hand of a tribesman in the middle of Africa than the President of the United States had 20 years ago. That's going to keep going. But what's really important is that our spiritual, emotional, psychological development keeps growing, and we don't just accept all these algorithms because all of a sudden our lives are going to be run by people, and some of them will have good intent but be wrong. So my only caution to add that is add to it, become a critical thinker. Become someone who becomes a student of the subjects that matter. Because when it comes to raising your children, or what you're going to believe spiritually, or what you're going to do for your health, or what you're going to do for your finances, if you just give it to some expert and they mess up, they could be sincere and be sincerely wrong. These are areas where the world we're in today, because of the internet, you can learn to master the subjects that matter. You can ask critical questions. You can get real answers. But most of us, the internet's the wild web, right? The Wild West, I should say.
It's always a better thing. I do think that because it's going to become a bigger thing, human capital will become priceless. Human touch will become priceless. Human creativity will become priceless. Human innovation will become priceless. To thinking bright, brilliant people, you'll be in a class all by yourself. Isolation has taught us that human touch is very important. I think we appreciate that now in a way that we didn't appreciate it before. I think whereas before COVID-19, we were worried about nuclear war and that sort of thing, we still need to think about it, but we need to be thinking more about biochemical war and things like that. COVID-19 showed us that a chemical war could come against us and flatten our economy and flatten everything and flatten the whole world simultaneously in the way that a nuclear bomb could only hit a region or a territory. We've got to think differently. The very fact that Washington released money but didn't have the technology to handle the load of people calling says where our equipment is outdated, our infrastructure underground is outdated, our technology in high places is outdated, our voting system is outdated. There are things that we could do to work things out. What it also forced us to do is politicians had to talk to CEOs, had to talk to computer geeks, had to talk to preachers, had to talk to spiritual leaders. We had to form new alliances. I hope those alliances don't break, because those alliances are the gateway to restoring trust as it relates to faith leaders, to restoring technology as it relates to CEOs. There are certain things that government does well. There are certain things that government doesn't do well. I hope we become more collaborative when this is over. I hope we have a lot more exchange like this. And I'm so happy to have the opportunity to talk to you, because whether you know it or not, as great as the conversation is, as great as our relationship is, as great as our friendship is, we are modeling something. that needs to be reduplicated around the world, that it's okay to talk to a faith leader, and you might be a CEO and somebody else might be an elected official, that our commonwealth of intellectualism gives us a bank of trust that our grandchildren will be able to live in. If we don't break down those walls and find, elected officials do it when a campaign is going on, but see, you know, they understand the power of the church then. CEOs have never had to do it. I understand why they're afraid. There are certain things that religion can be very disruptive to a CEO. That's why I started a foundation as a separate entity from my church, so that we could come together on what we agree on. America's never going to agree on everything. That's what makes America great, that we have the right to disagree. But where we have common interests like clean water, clean air, safe food, safe lodging,
education,
education, those kinds of things we need to collaborate on as a team, and everybody needs a seat at the table. Black folks, white folks, brown folks, males, females, millennials, boomers. We have to respect each other to bring a chair to the table that's for somebody other than your comrade and the people that you're comfortable with. If we get that out of this, it won't take away from the suffering. It won't take away from the many people who are calling me every day who said I couldn't hold my mother's hand while she was dying.
Yeah.
I had to FaceTime my father while he passed away. See, pneumonia doesn't give us that. You were talking about the stats about pneumonia and the flu. That might be true, but what that does not give us, I didn't have to be in isolation while I was dying. I didn't have to die in a room by myself. I didn't have to have a funeral on FaceTime. I didn't have all these bodies that are stinking and corroding in New York City in these trailers. This is a different type of crisis. The numbers don't show that, but if you go past the numbers and you look at the heart of it, the psychological, sociological damage that we have incurred, not just from isolation, but from grief, from loss, from the lack of closure, has put this in a very unique category. And we need to huddle together in order so that we can heal together, because I'm dealing with the people that bleed. I'm not dealing with the books that are written about the people that bleed. I live in the world of the people who are bleeding, who cannot get closure, who never got to say goodbye to their daughter, who had to do it on Skype and wonder, could she hear? Human touch is going to become one of the most precious resources in the world today. And I hope we value it while we increase technology, while we check out at the grocery store with computers, and while we swipe our phones in place of plane tickets, and while we distance ourselves on jets and reconfigure all of our businesses. I hope at the end of the day, the thing that becomes triumphant is the thing that God created, and that is human beings.
That the spirit of human beings, that your vision is why you are who you are, brother. And I hope more people will hear what you're sharing and take it seriously. I think the good news is disruption also tends to make people either give up or get stronger. And I think, you know, living for these 2 months where you could go to Costco, but you couldn't go to church, that you could go get, you know, alcohol, but you couldn't go to the gym. There's no science to that. And people didn't have to die by themselves, so they perceived that they might have to do it, and the rules did. So my hope is that people will have a larger voice, because things that they just accept that they won't next time. I think this pandemic has taught us a lot of things. The secret is, can people like yourself, can people that are respected by people all over the world, can they bring us together to see that this is something that's a human experience, that together we deserve and we need to help heal each other. And as you said earlier, what's made America great, that seems to have disappeared, is we can agree to disagree, right? Rather than, if you don't agree with what I do, you're immoral, wrong, and evil, and mine is the only way. I mean, that is getting in the way of this ability to collaborate. And so I think most Americans live more in the middle, even if they're marginalized economically or emotionally. I think most of them are reasonable, and they're looking for something that's reasonable, not the extreme right or the extreme left. They're looking for something that says, how do we together make a better world for ourselves and our children or grandchildren? And I think that's the impetus that hopefully all of this pain will drive forward, because crisis either destroys you or it creates you anew, right? Crisis creates breakthroughs in my world, I know in yours. And so I think we're going to see a lot of them. We'll see technological breakthroughs already happening, but the real important ones are the social, the emotional, and the spiritual ones, and the way we treat one another.
Listen, man, I admire you. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your wisdom. You've been very, very generous with it. Thank you for your donation, your support.
Of course.
Most of all, who you are is a donation to the world, of which you get much dividend off of.
The feeling is it's an honor to be with you once again. I miss you, and I'm coming to Dallas, in August, and if I can be there on a Sunday and church is open, I'll be there. I watched you online, but I really like being in your presence, brother, and the presence of what you create in an environment like that.
Let's go out and eat any day you come.
All right, you got it. You got it. I'll call you then.
Thanks a lot. Much love.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In the face of fear and uncertainty, in the face of sacrifice, in the face of isolation, in the face of loss and desperation, how can we move forward together when it feels like we couldn't be more apart? The T.D. Jakes Foundation and the Potter's House want you to know that no matter what happens, there are some things we can always count on. That your sacrifices are valued and help is on the way. You are not alone. And that bringing you the hope and the healing you need is our mission and our calling. We want you to know that in the face of change, we will face it together.